Hey guys. Thanks for coming. So we're going to do AI quantum. I'm going to ask a couple of questions, get the conversation going. I'm going to open it up to you guys. So start thinking about questions. Let's make this a little bit engaging. And maybe we'll start off with just some introductions. We have an incredible panel, very diverse group. Tell us a little bit about yourselves, what you do now, how you got into it, and anything interesting to share with the audience.
So my name's Orla Neary. I'm an immigrant, but became American a couple of years ago. I've been here for 20 odd years. One of my besties is from Murcia, from Stechin, so I want to chat with you later. But I work at Microsoft, and I have worked for the last 10 years on incubating new businesses for Microsoft. So I was involved in the early days of AI at Microsoft, and now incubating new streams of revenue for Microsoft based on quantum and AI for science specifically. My background is in translation and interpreting. So I graduated with a BA. So from a BA to quantum, journey is a bit helter-skelter, but have been fascinated with AI since my days in college, where I first learned about machine translation. And from there, ended up over here. So that's me.
Hi, I'm Alice. So I also got started with AI in college. I was, writing, we were learning about AI algorithms and writing them in Lisp and in the 90s. And I was sort of disappointed. I was like, this can't do anything, right? We were using this same underlying algorithms that we're using today. I mean, obviously they're a lot better, but just the scale of the data, the scale of the compute, our ability. We're building neural networks, but they were small, little bitty neural networks, and with little bitty data sets, and we couldn't do that much with them. So I was like, okay, well, I want to do things with computers. So I'm going to go do other things where I can go make things happen. I worked at Microsoft. I was at code.org, enabling education for computer science education for everybody. I'm currently at Salesforce. And one of the things that I really liked about Salesforce, so I run the platform at Salesforce. Our platform supports our own businesses like Sales Cloud and Service Cloud, but it also enables developers to build their own apps on the platform. So we have 9.5 million apps that are built on the Salesforce platform. We have thousands of companies who have built apps that sell them on the platform in what we call App Exchange, which is our marketplace for these applications. And one of our core value props there is that we enable people to get access to technology, right? We enable low-code app development to make it easy for anybody to go build solutions for their company, for their customers. And now, with AI, we're spending a lot of time enabling our customers and our partners and the ISVs that are built on our platform to be able to go leverage these technologies to transform their own businesses. And it can do all the things it couldn't do in the 90s. And it's amazing. It's amazing how it's taking off. I'm excited about it. I get to talk to customers and to partners and to companies every day who are doing really cool things with agents and AI on the Salesforce platform. And so, yeah, I'm excited to be here. And Gail?
So I'm Gail Jacoby, and like a couple other folks on the panel, I did work at Microsoft too, because this is Seattle after all. But I came from a very non-traditional path. I have a master's degree in teaching, and I spent several years as a public school educator working in a very rural part of Oregon. And the town library was only open about 4 hours a day. And many of my kids didn't have books at home and couldn't read and didn't have, literacy exposure in their homes. And when I saw the internet start to happen, I said to myself, that this technology is going to change the world in a more profound way than I think I ever can as a classroom teacher. I have to go get involved. And that's what led me into tech. And so I worked at a startup for a while. I worked at Microsoft for 20 years. I worked for a while at GoDaddy. And now I am a VP of product at Google, where I lead our data infrastructure team, which is the team that brings all of the world's data into Google in order to power Google search, in order to store the data from Google advertising, in order to power AI development by Google DeepMind and by all the product teams in Google. And it is such an exciting time. And like you, some of the first things I did in tech were using early forms of AI. I shipped Microsoft's first client-side spam filter back in 2002. And it was using a machine learning model to sort through emails and detect which ones were spam and which ones were not. And it was cool. But the thing I would say is the thread that I've followed through my career is I've always been an innovator, and I've always been drawn to what is the latest innovation that's going to really just unlock huge new potential and value. And so the internet was what brought me into tech. And then I did a lot of incubating on early social networking and figuring out what that meant to enterprises. And then the mobile wave was, of course, huge, and did a lot of V1 incubation work in mobile. But with this AI wave, it's I would say, bigger than all of them. I truly believe that the power of these large language models to unlock and accelerate answers to the hardest scientific problems, the hardest health problems, some of our planet's most challenging sustainability issues, is unparalleled, and I cannot be more excited to be sort of in the bowels of Google working on the data side of enabling all of that.
Thanks, Gail. Thank you for having me here. My name is Rena Solomon. I never worked for Microsoft in the past. I lead AI partnerships for the European aerospace company Airbus. For the reasons Alice mentioned, I did not start my career in AI. It wasn't the hype then. So I decided to do my master's in electrical engineering. And then over time, after I got my MBA, I decided to focus on roles which were at the intersection of emerging technology and strategy, and that's when I started having my focus honed more towards artificial intelligence. I've been in the consumer electronics space with Samsung, working on their Bixby AI assistant, building new business opportunities for them with new features. With the interest of exploring artificial intelligence impact on a broader set of industries, I decided to shift over to the aerospace, and I've been with Airbus a little over a year now. It's really interesting to see how much impact AI has in solving really hard problems for a non-typical tech company such as Airbus, right? So it is not a software player. We build aircrafts and satellites, but the impact that AI has in enabling internal operations, optimizing our design and planning, enabling simulations, improving the safety of the aircrafts. There's just so much opportunity and potential, and it's been an interesting ride so far. And I hope I can share some of my learnings on this panel.
Thank you, Rena. I learned something new. I didn't know that you were a school teacher, but I got to tell you, so I worked with Gail at Microsoft, and this connects a couple of dots. So she is one of the most empathetic, strong product builders you'll meet. And I think a lot of it is because of your background being non-traditional, how you look at the world, how you worked with those kids. And I say that with you all to say that you don't need to have a traditional background to actually make a bigger impact in wherever role you land. Some of the most incredible colleagues that I've worked with absolutely don't have a typical, my battery is running low, absolutely don't have the typical background. So lean into your differences, lean into the unique background that you bring. It actually can make you a lot stronger in exactly the role that you do. All right, so going back to the theme here. Generative AI, quantum, a lot of people say these are like buzzwords, right? So Gail, tell me a little bit from your perspective. Do you think that we've moved past the hype of generative AI?
Yeah, I would say 100% yes. And I think there's three ways that I look at that. One is just like, how do I work every day? How does my organization work every day? And I would say at this point, like if I'm writing a document or a big, communication out to the team, yes, it's going to be in my voice, it's going to be authentically me, but AI is going to write the first draft for me because I can save so much time by doing that. And AI is going to learn what kinds of structures of documents that work for me and who my audience is and keep making that better. When I have to consume a ton of information and read a bunch of papers and documents and research and whatnot, I put them into Notebook LM. Anyone tried Notebook LM? Amazing, right? And I can listen to a podcast of those documents while I'm on a walk in the evening. And it's just an incredible thing to be able to transform knowledge across modalities and extract the key nuggets. And if you just for kicks, you can put your LinkedIn profile in Notebook LM and then ask it to make a podcast about your life and play it for your family. So that's
weird.
a fun party trick. But that's just local productivity. When I look at the engineering teams around Google, the amount of code that is now being generated by AI, and the engineers are still, of course, reviewing the code, making sure it's good, making sure it's correct, but the percentage generated and kept by AI is incredibly high and growing, which is about just increasing productivity. There's always so much more work to do than there is time, and so that's very, very exciting. Now zoom out to industry and look at the way that companies are using AI, right? And I serve on the board of a bank, and the bank is now using AI to synthesize customer complaint themes, to accelerate loan processing, and of course, as a bank, it's essential that that is secure and private and compliant, and the AI systems have been designed for those purposes. And so you obviously have to have a really informed IT decision maker that's making sure that you're picking an AI system that is tuned for those use cases. But the fact that essential functions like that are now relying on AI is incredible. And then lastly, I would say, I don't know how many of you have ridden in a Waymo or have read about the fact that Google DeepMind, Demis and team received the Nobel Prize for their research on AlphaFold, where these large language models are now decoding some of the greatest mysteries of human science, and it's just incredible. So yes, we are way past the hype.
love the real world examples, which brings me to Orla and quantum. Where are you on the hype cycle, my dear?
So I think we are where AI was about 7-8 years ago. So there's a lot of hype, and so definitely AI is for real. Like we're using it all day, every day. But for quantum, it's at the very early stages. So you've probably seen headlines about what quantum is going to be capable of, that it's going to revolutionize every industry. It's not. And so I guess taking a wee bit of a step back for everybody in the room who doesn't really know what quantum is, now take this from a non-physicist. Classical computing is zeros and ones, right? Things are either a yes or a no. Like think about it like a light switch. It's either on or it's off. For quantum computing, you can be many things at the same time. So the light can be on and off at the same time. So, what does that mean for problem solving? Well, for classical compute, things are quite logical. Like you try one thing and it doesn't work. You try the next thing. It doesn't work. You try another way. In quantum computing, you can try all these different things at the same time. So it makes it exponentially faster. So it's just a new way of thinking, and it's a completely new way of computing. The science is real. That's not hype. The science is real, and the breakthroughs that are happening in this field are happening at a much faster rate because of AI. And so what we're seeing now is the Google, Amazon, all these different players have amazing research and development departments with quantum scientists. So the investment is real, right? So these corporations are investing real money because we believe in the potential of it to pass the hype stage and to become real. And so I'm seeing, like what I'm doing specifically in quantum is really helping organizations get prepared for a quantum and AI future. Because we see, like in AI, the companies, the people that are adopted AI early on are the ones that are benefiting early as well. And so that's where I'm at right now with quantum, and I'll share more later.
Love that. And then Rena, bring us home with a little bit of reality check on AI in the aerospace.
Awesome. AI in general, or any deep tech, right? I mean, there's a reason it gets so much buzz, so much hype, right? Obviously, the potential for impact is definitely huge. But it all depends on the breakthroughs. These things don't happen overnight. They take a while and for these breakthroughs to enable these impacts, which has happened in AI, which has not happened in quantum yet, right? And it's just still evolving. So, as I mentioned, when I started my career, not so much buzz. Fast forward, now you're seeing a lot of applications with the self-driving cars being scalable, especially in the aerospace industry. We are seeing a lot of impact with being able to improve the safety of our aircrafts, being able to provide an extra set of eyes for the pilots to reduce accidents. We are seeing accelerating of our planning process, being able to use AI for manufacturing, computer vision for quality assessment. There's just huge potential that is creating business impact, creating return on investment, and opportunities in the aerospace industry, and that is real, and that's no hype. So when I think about the evolution of AI and how it's been growing, some people would say it's mature. I would like to say it's kind of in the adolescent phase, and I hope you guys like teenagers. Just like teenagers, it's at a stage where it's capable of doing a lot of things better than their parents are, right? But it's going to continue to evolve really fast. But as it starts learning more life experiences, as it becomes more intelligent, capabilities are going to accelerate. Will there be hype around it? Yes, some of it might just be buzz. But there's no question that AI as a technology as a whole is past the hype phase and here to create business impact today and moving on into the future.
I love your analogy of teenagers because I have a couple teenagers and they're naughty. And I sit on several boards, and a lot of what we do is think about AI governance. And I think given that it's in the teenage stage, it needs governance because it can be naughty. And so that oversight is really critical.
Absolutely.
I have more questions, but before I go, let's make it interactive so it's a little bit more fun. You guys have any questions for the panel?
Right now I work in one of the tech companies that aren't labeled up on the panel, but AWS, I've been there for 7 years and managed one of our strategic enterprise account customers in the sales space. And I'm trying to figure out how to navigate my career from the role I'm in right now to more of a leadership role and going from a non-traditional, I think, sales, yes, you speak tech, but you don't speak as in-depth. What kind of helped you in your career to go from maybe a non-traditional background to becoming a leader in a tech role? And I saw you did sales and you've been at Microsoft for 20 years, so I'm really curious to know how you've been able to navigate and work your way up to both your guys' roles.
Thank you. So let me try and condense it, but I'm happy to chat with you later. So thanks for the question. I graduated college with a degree in translation interpreting, but was really into how AI machine translation could help translators, do stuff faster. Like I had to look up actual paper dictionary in college, and there was two, right? One for French, one for Spanish for scientific translation. And so, it was tough, right? And so I got fascinated then. And that's what led me into actually the tech world. Was I went and did an internship for a Canadian software company that had invested in setting up localization operations in Ireland and Dublin. And they were interested in me because I was interested in figuring out how we could use AI to speed up translation and therefore save them dollars for localization. So that was sort of the start of the shift away from actually being a translator and interpreter, because that's what I wanted to do, was work as an interpreter in the UN. And so just through that internship, I realized, oh gosh, I love this space. I could do customer service. I could do all sorts of different things. And so that's what actually led me over here 20 odd years ago, was running a localization engineering team. And then that went into content publishing and whatnot. 2 kids later, I had a team of over 100 folks around the world, and my kids were under the age of 6. I was a single mom. I was like, I can't do this shit, and I need to, change. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But one of the pieces of advice I got early on, and before I even went to college, was, and I think somebody on the panel said it earlier. I think it was you, Carolina. Like, do what you love. And so I got some advice. I'm like, hey, look, I want to change. I want to change away from engineering. I want to make myself more marketable if I was to move to a different subsidiary. So I want to get closer to marketing and sales. How do I get going? And so the dude from Trinity College had advised me, like, do what you love. I got the same advice from one of the recruiters, like, do what you love. And so I thought, well, I need to figure my way back to language. So I became a speechwriter at Microsoft. For a VP of developer tools. So he took a leap of faith on me that I could, I was a good communicator and therefore could help him communicate his thoughts in a better way. And that was the start of, then I met an amazing manager. I've had the same manager for 17 years and I've grown and thrived.
That's incredible.
Under her.
That's very rare. That's amazing.
Yeah, and so I'm happy to chat with you more later, but I do what I love, and I surround myself with people that I can learn from every day, be that in Microsoft, on my team, outside my team, or in my network. So as long as I'm learning and growing, I stay doing what I do.
And can I tell you, you actually did become a translator, because when you think about everything you've done from speech writing to what you do today, you're translating between the tech at Microsoft, the research guys, and communicating out to everyone else, whether it's via sales or, so it's like you really did it.
Yay, I did it.
You did it.
I'll try to keep it really quick. I'll say 3 things. Number 1 is don't be afraid to just go put yourself out there and try to do something, even if you're not sure how to do it. Whether that's, for me, getting a job at a first startup, like I didn't even know how computers worked. And I was just like, okay, if I can convince them to hire me, then I'll figure out the next thing. And so I think just keep pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, because if you never take risks, you just won't get as many experiences under your belt. The second thing I would say is cultivate the courage to imagine what could be better and different, and to call out problems and opportunities. Earlier in my career, I remember sitting in many a meeting thinking, like, we're not even talking about the right thing here, or there's this other thing that we could be doing that's even more impactful, or we should cancel this project because it's just not going far enough. And I didn't have the courage to speak up. And Alice and I were talking last night about how, like, now I think we're both at the place where, do you want to quickly tell this story?
Well, I want to make sure we have time for other questions. But yeah, I think, I'll give you an example for that one. So I took a class in college, and I think one of the challenges that a lot of people have when they go into tech is there's just a bunch of words we don't know. We can get all of the concepts, but there's this barrier that just shouldn't be there, right? And so, I'm in my first college class, and they're talking about BBSs, and they're also talking about a bunch of other words I don't know. And some of those words were really important, and some of them weren't. BBS turns out to be bulletin board system. It's just Reddit, but in the 90s, right? And, you're sitting there like, well, am I supposed to know this, or am I not supposed to know this? And at some point I was like, okay, if I'm gonna get into this, I've just gotta ask when I don't know. And so I was in this class, and I started raising my hand, and I started asking, and I figured some of the things I ask are gonna be dumb. That's okay. I'm just gonna get through it. And what I found was, I was shocked. A bunch of people started coming up to me after class, I'm so glad you asked that question, right? Because it turned out when I had a question, I wasn't the only one in the room who had a question. And by the end of the class, I had the confidence to know I should be asking the question when I don't know. And, and if I get some of them wrong, that's okay. Because overall, I'm gonna push us in the right direction. And now, I think that same thing, but leveled up, right? Now I'm leading big teams, and we're choosing direction and strategy. And if something doesn't feel right, I think we can all build that courage to say, I'm gonna say something. And overall, you'll get some of them wrong, it's okay, right? And that's where you have a discussion, but I think it builds your credibility, it builds your confidence, and it'll help other people see that you can help lead in the right direction.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a good question. Let's go another one.
I have 2 questions actually. See, one is convincing myself that, I can do this, and maybe, navigating the unknown. But the other part is to convince the other person on the other side of the table that I am the right person to take something as responsible as a leading tech, business. How do you sort of manage to convince the other person that I am the right person to take, care of this job and win that position for yourself?
I think imposter syndrome is real, and a lot more real for women than it typically is for men. I've got 2 sons, and so I'll say they're like chalk and cheese. One thinks he's the best at everything, even if he hasn't tried it, and the other one doubts himself. So I'm not saying that, imposter syndrome isn't for guys, but I do think it is a real thing. And I do think it's something that we have to just be aware of and just really push ourselves to go outside of our comfort zones. Like, I do it every day. I don't believe that, like, I'm in quantum, I don't believe what the hell is going on in the room. I'm with all these, really amazing scientists, and I question why am I there, but I bring value. I understand how you can get organizations to pay attention to your message. I've done it for the last 10, 15 years. And so I just have to believe in my value myself. And I know it's easier said than done, but I think we are all our worst critic. And so I think giving ourselves a bit of a break will help with that.
I'll also add, I think the power of networking and the power of cultivating people that can advocate for you is incredibly powerful. And sometimes we forget how important it is. We're all at an event together, talk to each other, meet each other. You just never know when someone's going to open a door for you. And the more people who just know how awesome you are and you can help them and they can help you, it really is powerful. And it gives you that, many times when I've been at an inflection point in my career, it's like calling my board of advisors, and I call it my sort of wise, smart, slightly more senior than me friends, and say, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And I always get such good advice from them, and then I can pass my own advice on to others when they're in those pivotal moments too.
Amazing points. I just like to add a few things. I think you started with the question of convincing yourself, right? That's where it starts. You have to believe that you can do it. Nobody out there knows everything. Everybody can learn everything. So that's what we believe in, right? So you have to be able to have that courage to believe in yourself and also continue to learn and keep yourself updated. That's really critical, especially when it comes to tech. You don't have to know everything, but you have to know enough to ask the right questions, and that's really important, and that's when you will be taken seriously. Last thing is, it's not going to be easy. There will be questions. There will be people who will put you down. Yeah, there will be that happening. Yeah. But do not lose your confidence. Be comfortable, be uncomfortable. I think that's really, really key. Sure. And just take one step every time to become the person you want to be. So, and I think you'll do great.
That's really practical, right? So thank you so much. Another question, maybe if there's enough time, I want to know is, Google, for example, right, is seated on the world's data as we speak today. And the models are coming from, getting created. AI is getting created from the likes of Microsoft, Google, Salesforce, and, people sitting in the forum today. We spoke about bias, right? How and what are you doing as leaders to ensure that there is less and less of bias in the way we are architecting AI solutions, businesses around, and it's all data, right? So what is that we are doing, and you are doing instead as a leaders and women leaders instead, to make sure that there is less and less of bias?
Yeah, it's such an important topic, and I don't know how many of you have seen Joy Buolamwini's work in the, sort of the inherent bias that is already baked into so much of our AI, but it's a real problem and challenge. I think that the good news is I can speak certainly for Google, and I believe this is true for all the large tech companies that are building these models, but I'm closest, obviously, to what Google is doing. The focus and commitment to responsible AI development is paramount, and it has to be paramount because these models cannot be let out into the world and cannot be trusted if we do not take responsibility for ensuring that safety and that privacy and that removing inappropriate bias, and that training these models on the right data that we have access and rights to train it on, that those things are all in place. And I think that I'm proud actually that Google was a little bit slower to launch some of their AI solutions because they really didn't want to prematurely start scaling these things out before there was a level of maturity there for that purpose. A lot of what my team spends our day doing is literally ensuring that every bit of AI data that is used for model development can be traced back. We can see exactly what was used for what purpose. We can pull it out if we need to, and that we're ensuring that we have, the systems in place to ensure that only the data that should be getting used for training is getting used for training, and that there's lineage and transparency about that. And so I think, it is something that we have to keep pushing for collectively and not settling when we see things that don't seem right. And we also need diverse teams building the AI, because if you don't have diverse brains looking at the outputs, it's probably more likely that we're going to miss things.
I'd add to that. I think, so at Salesforce, we do make our own models for various scenarios, but we're also really invested in an open model platform, right? So you can bring your own model from Google or OpenAI or other systems and say, hey, here's a model I want to use. And I think, and one of the things we've been really focused on is what is the trust layer that you need around that model? And how do I think about how I'm using that model in the context of my business? So how do I give a business the right protections, we call it our Einstein trust layer, around what I'm doing? And it gets into all of the things you're talking about, but I think it's interesting because there's actually two parts of this problem. One is the model itself, and the other is what data is going into that model, right? And, am I using, we have our ethical use guidelines that we've been publishing. We provide the tools so that I can monitor the data that I'm giving access to, the privacy of that data. If I'm in the healthcare industry, I really want to make sure, and it's not even in the model, but the data that we're sending to the model for that healthcare scenario needs to follow HIPAA protections. So we need to make sure we've got the right protections in place. We need auditing of all of the data that's coming in and the data that's coming out. We need to be able to analyze that. We need to be able to look at it and have the observability to say, are we, what's happening after we've used this model? And we need to think about the scenarios and where we're using the models, what outcomes are we influencing with these models, and how are we incorporating them into our business? So I really think it's an end-to-end challenge that we need to be thinking about across the board. Yeah.
We're going to move to another question. Before we move to the question over there, I want to close out and connect two dots that you just laid in your two questions. For those who are navigating tech right now from the outside, outsiders, marginalized leaders, and are struggling, I think a lot of the things that we covered are very much kind of the typical experiences that people have. You do have imposter syndrome, so what do? You work twice as hard to study and prepare and make sure that when you show up, you're going to be ready. You don't have all of the natural networks that maybe others come with who went to the same colleges and have all the same and play golf together. So what do? You go out of your way to try to figure out who can be your sponsor, who can be your advocate, and you make those connections. You sit around sometimes and pay very close attention to the unspoken things that are said in the meetings that you feel could potentially help or hurt you. So you have a very strong knack that you've built for reading the signals in the room that are sometimes not obvious signals. You've learned to navigate all of the challenges to get to where you are today. And what I'll tell you is, it is exactly those muscles that you have built to influence without direct power, to lean in when you don't always have the confidence to recognize bias because you felt the bias and to try to create that psychological safety for others. It is exactly that muscle, it is exactly those skills that make you guys the right leaders for this new AI age. Because in this new AI age, the skills and capabilities that we appreciated in the past for leadership, which had a lot to do with years of experience and who you know and your networks, they're all being slashed. How long you've worked in a job doesn't matter. So it is exactly these skills that actually make you have a very unique advantage when ethics and bias and understanding how to read and recognize when the AI might go wrong and manage all of those signals. So lean into these things that make you a little different, and that is your strength as you look to have leadership in this new era. And I think we have one question over there.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me well? Yeah? Okay. Thank you so much actually for this follow-up. And usually they say amen, I say amen to that. I have a very creative question. Imagine your old co-founders of a stealth startup that doesn't have a product yet, not in the market, but the co-founders got together, all 5 of you, to brainstorm what you are to build and bring to you. The criteria are, it has to be based off your passion, very much in line with what you believe in. Second, environmental social governance principles. It has to create input. And the third one, it has to be trendy enough for the future to work, for eternity and beyond. You are in design thinking session. So the question to each one of you, is that product that you want your team to build and launch in the market? Thank you.
So, okay, I think I missed your second criteria. So your first criteria was?
Your passion.
Okay.
Environmental, social governance, ESG principles.
Okay, got it.
And last long for the future. So it's not like the hype is forever.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. I'm kind of cheating here because it was my last project, was exactly this. I was doing my passion project. How many of you have done the Hour of Code or code.org? You used it? I've got some people in the room. Our goal was to give access to the world to computer science, right? And computer science, I don't just mean coding, right? It is what is the cloud and what is data and how do we create the opportunity for everybody to be a part of all of this amazing stuff that we're talking about. And those barriers, like not knowing BBSs, I don't want that to keep anybody out of the opportunity to be a part of this future. And when I started there, only 10% of schools in the United States offered a single computer science course. It's not that the students didn't take it, the school didn't even offer one. And so our goal there was, how do we enable all of the teachers at all of our schools, the school systems, the state regulations, the political regulations, to all enable people to be able to learn computer science. And it was amazing. We now have computer science in just over half of the schools in the United States. We have Hour of Code that is an introduction to get people interested and excited about this, that runs around the world. I don't even know what the number is now. It's probably 100 million students who have done it. And I'm still super passionate about this. I now think if I were starting this today with AI, I would do it I would do a lot of the same things that we did. I would also do it a little bit differently because now AI exists. And one of the things that I think is really interesting, AI existed. We used AI. We used AI to determine, like machine learning AI. So we used it for things like hints, right? I've got a bunch of students, they're at different levels. I want to give dynamic hints that are the right level for an individual student. That was the kind of AI we could use then. We didn't have generative AI that we have today. One of the things that I think is really interesting about your question and what you can do today is that no matter what your passion is, no matter what you're trying to build, the accessibility of these AI tools, they're becoming so much more accessible. So you can use it for anything you want to go do, and you don't need to be a developer to take advantage of them. If you haven't already, you should all go build an agent. I don't care if you're a developer or not, you absolutely don't need to be one. You can build an agent today. You can use AI today to enable you to do your business. I was just talking to one of our customers, Alex. He runs something called Adobe Population Health in Phoenix. And they work with the local Phoenix population to provide that like larger level of care for things like prenatal care, perinatal care for women who might be homeless, and making sure they have access to the right check-ins, or helping people who are getting dehydrated to the point that they're going in for hospitalization. How do we prevent a future hospitalization? How do we call them on the phone and just make sure they had a glass of water today? And they're doing that in-home care, those touch points, making sure people have access to food, access to the, all of the care that they need. And he has a team of low-code developers. Right? He doesn't have a team of engineers who are, playing around in Java with, whatever. He has a team of low-code developers, and they're looking at, hey, how do I use AI to do things like give me a summary of this account before we go out and talk to them? Or how do I use AI to help people find the closest food banks to them to make sure that they're doing that? Or use AI he was talking to me about questionnaires. Said, just the filling out, you've all done it. You go to the doctor's office and they're like, hey, Gail, have you fallen lately? Right? And he's like, he's like, it's questionnaire fatigue. People don't want to fill them out anymore. And so using AI to be able to have a conversation with the customer and pull out those important pieces of data can make it feel like I'm not filling out yet another questionnaire telling you how often I drink, right? And so those capabilities can change fundamentally how we do healthcare in Arizona, in Phoenix, with this population. And it can also change how do we make sure teachers have the access to the right tools and that they can ask questions when they don't understand things. And we can generate supports for the classroom, for the education. And I think, this is, I think, one of the most exciting things about AI today is that we can leverage all of this inside of all of the problems that we're already trying to solve. So I think it starts with really your question. What is your passion? What are the problems you're trying to solve within that passion? And then how do we leverage these new tools to be able to do it?
I really love what you said. I think a lot of women, what we're focusing is RAI as responsible AI, or the bias, how it has, rather than, I think we should flip the story. How AI can be used as empowering us, AI literacy. So like you said, I'm an immigrant, but I'm a citizen now, but one of the things women don't like is do the official paperwork, the finance, the investments, and all that. Maybe AI could be the tool to what we have not been innately doing, and rather than relying on men. I rely on my husband most of the time for my finances. I want to use AI now and say, hey, I can handle it. So I think AI, we are focusing a lot. I need responsible AI, so I love all that aspect. But I think we can also bring the AI literacy part around that. So the story could be flipped in that, because now we have the tools and the mechanism to follow those things which we want to do and enable this.
I think that's such an important insight, and I would say for anyone who is looking to enter the workplace, this is the time to get in there and learn and adopt and tinker and build, because it's still early. Like the tools, they're cool, but they're still like super immature, right? And like you can go launch the Gemini app or launch, pick the AI tool of your choice, and it's kind of like you're talking to this incredibly brilliant thing that knows all the information in the world and can do anything you want, but it doesn't really show you it can do all these things. And so we have to. There's a lot of product work to be done to make the magic that's inside these models more discoverable right now, but it's there. And so I would say, like, if you're not just tinkering daily, like go spend an hour of AI. We're actually doing an hour of AI inspired by you. Thank you, Alice. Across our whole division right now at Google, and just encouraging everyone, literally go spend an hour and just try try Gemini Gems, which are like, these amazing little agents, and there's some that are already built and you can design your own, and just try and see what you can do. I planned an offsite for 100 people a few weeks ago, and I just had Gemini be my thought partner, and it went out and pulled a bunch of research for me. It synthesized the research. It came up with an outline for the offsite. Then it came up with like different activities, and then it created a facilitator guide for this one activity, and then it told me what materials to go get, and it's just like all this power of like taking a vague idea of like, well, here's an offsite for 100 people, here's what we want to explore, and turning out the entire plan. But no one told me that the AI could do that for me. I had to just kind of spelunk in there and explore and try things. And sometimes it's going to vastly disappoint you, and sometimes it's going to blow your mind with what it can do.
I think that's a strong way to end it. Do we have any last questions?
How much of decision-making capabilities can be pushed into the AI part? Because when you talk about planning a day or planning anything, like AI can do everything for you. Like it provides multiple options. Part of me feels like it's replacing the human connection that like I have. And then even with ChatGPT, there is a voice-related one, which is like really conversational. I do it. My question is like, how much of it would you be using to plan your day or plan your entire?
I'll give you a really quick answer, and then I want to hear from other people too. We always say, think of AI like a really eager, smart intern. And so it's going to come up with all kinds of great ideas. Sometimes you can look at them and say, great, let's go with that. But a lot of times you're going to be like, nah, it wasn't quite it. Don't abdicate. You don't abdicate your responsibility or your judgment to AI. It's just an accelerating tool that can help you.
Just a quick question. So I've started seeing a lot of companies moving towards more of a synthetic data customer model where they're trying to improve their AI models. And so would that impact just the result at the end of the day versus real data versus synthetic customer data? What does that look like?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think synthetic data currently enables to accelerate the learning process, right? You have real data, but the process of gathering all the real data to make your models robust currently doesn't exist. So you need to create simulated data to create situations like edge cases that the system needs to handle. So honestly, it is an accelerant at this point rather than being and obviously you have to put rails in place to make sure that there are certain bounds and it works under certain bounds. But synthetic data itself is a great accelerant to make sure that you move faster and address the edge cases for your model. So for example, in self-driving situations, you cannot detect you can't detect a deer in front of you, and you probably can't get enough data to actually train it for that situation, right? So how do you do that? For example, in an aircraft, you're probably not going to see an elephant in a runway. So those situations don't happen, right? But it is an edge case. So how do you make your models robust? You have to create synthetic data, and that's where it adds and helps you accelerate your product.
I think that's a great answer. I think we're going to end it here. We're at time, but anyone can come up and ask questions afterwards. I want to thank the panel.
Thank you.